Hey there everybody, and welcome back to our ongoing series of commercial property lessons. And this is actually lesson number 4 we're into right now. So to give you a recap in case you weren't here on lesson 1, 2, and 3, I went over a lot of things, what we should buy, what we're looking for, the easy qualifiers to pre-screen the properties, the advantages, the disadvantages, and I've even gone through a couple of ways to buy property without your money right now. And in fact, lesson 3 was the first 2 ways. One of those was subordination, and the second one was using part of the seller's property to raise the money to buy all of the property with. So if you missed those, go back and check those out. If you are a Gold Club member, they're on your membership site. If you're not a Gold Club member, go to ronsgoldclub.com and go ahead and sign up right now. And I promise you, for the measly $59 a month to be a member, the benefits are just tremendous, including all the forms and agreements that you're going to need to do this commercial property stuff. So on this series of lessons, right now on this one, in fact, I'm going to talk about 2 more ways to buy property without using your money. And I've got about 14 altogether, so I'm going to do 6 or 7 of them here during this series. And also coming up, I'll tell you about our upcoming live event and give you a strong incentive to get in that as well. So here we go. All right, let's start with method number 3, which is very simple, and probably you've heard it before, and that is use a private lender to fund a project that you buy at full price and beyond. And in fact, let me show you an example of that. Here's a project that a student brought to me in the mid-2000s, 2006 I think. This is a warehouse warehouse office space down in Central Florida. 185,000 square feet in this building, and it was totally vacant when the student brought it to me. And in fact, that's why he brought it to me. If you go back to our easy identifiers that we discussed, the fact that it was totally vacant is what popped it out of the system. And I think this came right off of a website that I'm going to discuss on one of my upcoming lessons, and that's where he got it from. Anyway, after exploring this and getting into the details on it, we found out that a mattress company had moved out of it. There's 33 acres here sitting right next to an airport in a small city. And the airport wasn't really being used at that time, but they had plans to reopen it in the future. But the asking price, or actually the agreed upon price for this whole property, 33 acres with 185,000 square foot of buildings on it, they were in pretty good shape, for $3 million. Now, it wasn't too hard for us to do a little bit of math and figure out that it seemed like a pretty good deal. Of course, one big problem, and that is it was totally vacant. So just for the record, anytime you got a property that comes to you that's totally vacant, you can forget about going to any institution to get the money. You're not going to get it. No institution is going to lend on a property that doesn't have the cash flow coming in, like a totally vacant warehouse. So I knew the only way we could make this deal work was to buy it cheap enough so that I could get the private money to buy it, which I did, because we got an appraisal on that property. In fact, we got an appraisal on that property for $8.6 million, and with that appraisal, I borrowed $3 million from private money, and then later, $3.5 million on private money, out of which came $3 million to buy the property, another $500,000 to put into the till, minus the closing costs to get some things done and to make payments on it while we were stabilizing or renting up the property. I figured, well, what the heck? As smart as we are, we could get tenants in that property maybe a year or so. Well, sure enough, 3 years later, we had the property about 75% occupied, and it started paying for itself. And then later, went out and refinanced the property for $5.5 million with a bank-type loan, paid off the underlying debt. But back to the point is, I used private money to fund the entire project and borrowed more than the purchase price. Now, the key to that deal, of course, is that you must buy it cheap enough to allow the loan-to-value ratio to be funded with a private loan so that the private lender feels comfortable. And then, of course, you've got to go find the private money, and that's a whole series of seminars all in its own, and we kind of discussed that actually in my live training event. And then you got to borrow enough to not only buy the property, but make sure you cover the holding costs. I knew that if I borrowed money from a private lender that I'd have to pay him interest, and I did, and it was a higher rate of interest as well. And I knew that once I get it stabilized, we could refinance it or sell it and then pay that off. So that's what we did. We refinanced it, paid off the lender, and then brought some more money out of the refi as well. And you must know your exit strategy. Don't try to go into one of these things if you don't know your exit strategy. That would be foolish. I never let anybody that works with me buy a property when they have no clue what they're going to do with it. Now let me show you another example of a property that's, it's not a multi-million-dollar property at all. In fact, here's a project that I just purchased last month. This is was sent to me by a realtor, incidentally. Didn't come off of a website. The realtor sent it to me. And what it is 6 townhouses that were never completed. Now, these 6 townhouses sit on a property right here in Jacksonville, large enough for 16 more townhouses to be built when the market comes back and it's time to build them. These 6 were already built, but they needed about $100,000 to finish out the build out and put the parking lots in and hook up the utilities and so. And of course I didn't know that from the beginning, because all I could see was what they looked like inside, and I figured it'd take about 50. So this project came to me with a total asking price of $225,000. Now, I didn't have to do much math to see that an asking price of $225,000 for 6 townhouses that were almost done, that would need 50 in work, with room to build 16 more already zoned and laid out and plotted and everything else, was a pretty good asking price. So I got to investigating it, and I put it under contract for $175,000. I made an offer for $175,000. They accepted my offer, and I bought myself 60 days to do due diligence, which you get to do in commercial property. You buy yourself 60 days or more to do due diligence, and if you don't like anything you find, you can back out of the deal. Unlike residential, with commercial, those clauses are already built into every agreement I've ever seen. And in fact, I'll tell you that at least 50% of the commercial deals fall out during that due diligence period. So anyway, we got to work, and I hired a contractor, paid him about $1,000 to go out there and tell me everything we needed to do to get this thing ready to go. And he came back, it'll cost about $100 grand to get it in shape. Now, knowing that, which was twice as much as I expected, I went back to the broker and I said, can't pay $175,000. Most I can pay is $75,000. We just discovered it's going to cost twice as much as I thought to get it fixed. Broker came back and said, nope, can't do that. Bank says I got to have at least $100. This was a bank-owned property. So I said, all right, we'll give him $100. So we came down from $175,000 to $100 by just playing this game. So got it under contract for $100,000. My intention was to fund it for $100,000 and then borrow another $100,000 to fix it. So I was going to get a private loan for $200,000 on it. And I knew that the rents would easily cover. This thing will rent for $800-900 a month per unit times 6. So I got what, 6 times $5,000 a month coming in, which will easily cover the debt on a $200,000 private loan at say 7% or so. My goal was to fund it with a private lender, get it all ready to go, get it stabilized, and just sit on it until we decided sometime later to build on it, or somebody wanted to buy it, or whatever. And the cash flow would have been strong. In fact, let me put those numbers up here on the board for you right now. Actually, what I was going to do in the back of my mind, I was going to get a loan for $250,000, and at 7% with a private loan, because I knew the loan-to-value ratio would be low. Remember now, I only needed $100 to buy the property out of the $250, and another $100 to fix it. So the $250 would be based on a totally after-repaired value in excellent condition, and the cash flow would easily support it because I could borrow the money at 7% interest, and I figured out that if I put it on a 7-year ammo, that means in 7 years it's free and clear, it's paid off. So I borrowed $250,000 at 7% on a 7-year ammo. That would make the monthly payment, as showing on your screen there right now, at $3,773 a month. But I also knew that I'd have at least $5,400 a month cash flow coming from it, so I'd have a good, strong, positive cash flow on the 6 units sitting there with room to build 16 more, which basically we acquired for free, kinda, because the units are paying for the whole property. So I'd have a monthly cash flow, at least enough to cover taxes, insurance, and some vacancies, and we'd have pulled about $50,000 out of the property on the front end, which is fine with me as well. Plus, I guess the biggest thing was that in 7 years the property would be free and clear again. That's the most important part. So we bought it cheap. We could fund it with private loans for enough to buy it, fix it, and then some. Still have a good value on it, still have a positive cash flow on it, 7 years on it, free and clear. Now I say that's what I could have done because that's not what I did do. I had an opportunity to exchange this property into a barter system, and I exchanged it for $275,000 and got out of it, but I got $275,000 worth of barter points that I can use for $275,000 worth of goods now, and I'm going to use those points to help build out my restaurant that's in the works. Okay, anyway, that technique is very simple. Buy the property cheap enough so that you can borrow all the money from a private lender and borrow more than you need to buy it and turn it around, and then you can get it ready for your exit strategy, which is either refinance it or sell it like I did. Okay, number 4. This technique is called use private money for the down payment and borrow the rest from the bank. In other words, I'm borrowing from 2 different places, but the top end, the higher part of the loan-to-value ratio, is coming from a private lender. The rest of it is coming from a bank at whatever loan-to-value ratio they want to lend. Now, I've got an example of that here. This on your screen right now is a picture of the actual office building that I'm sitting in right now, filming this for you. And it's a good example of what I just said. Now, I first bought this office building back in 1995, and take a look at the numbers on your board and you'll see how I bought it. I bought it from a bank. It was a bank repo, and I knew at that time that the after repaired value, or the ARV, was about $750,000. Now, I made an offer to the bank for $550. I think they were asking $600 or $650. I offered $550. Now, the key is I offered $550 cash with no contingencies, not contingent upon financing, and they accepted my offer. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I later found out that they had a $650,000 offer on the table, but it was contingent upon getting financing. They turned it down to take my cash offer. But here's the irony of it. Once I got my offer accepted on the building, I then went to that same bank and applied for financing. Now, my credit was not good, so I had a partner do the financing. And my partner, at that time, borrowed $412,500 from the bank, and that left us $137,500 short of the purchase price. So I got a private lender of mine that I was working with at that time to make me a second mortgage of $137,500 on a private loan, and he did that with no payments but accruing interest. And 3 years later, we refinanced and paid him off. So let me go through the details again. My purchase price was $750. I borrowed $412,500 from the same bank that I had a contract on for $550. That was a 73%. I'm sorry, that was a whatever it was. Anyway, it come out to a low loan-to-value ratio. And then I borrowed $137,500 from a private lender, and the first and the second combined was 73% loan-to-value ratio on the property. Remember, it's worth $750. I borrowed a total of $550 to get the money to pay the bank all cash. But $137,500 came from a private lender. Therefore, I came out of pocket with no money to buy this building in 1995. And again, 3 years later, we refinanced, and at that time, the building appraised for $1.2 million. So we refinanced it, paid off all the underlying debt, and brought home some cash on top of that. All because I was able to structure the deal where I didn't have to have my money. If I'd had to have my money in 1995, I would not be able to buy this building. We're still in this building today. So that's what, 16, 17 years ago. And by the way, that loan is getting paid down nicely. Okay, so that's it for now. That's a couple of more ways that you can buy property with nothing down. Coming up here is a couple more ways on the next lesson. And again, if you haven't seen the previous lessons, go to ronsgoldclub.com and get signed up for that right now. And that's not only where you'll find these lessons, it's the only place you can get these lessons mounted. They're coming down off of YouTube, so you better go get signed up and get them if you want to come back to them. And pretty soon I'm going to be sending you some information in the mail concerning our upcoming event here in Jacksonville, Florida, March 15th through the 18th. That I think you're going to be very excited about. So I'll see you on the next lesson where we talk about 2 more ways to buy property with no money down.